Hello and welcome to On the Kerbs. I'm your host, Timo Albers Daly. In this episode, I'm joined by two-time champion racecar driver, motivational keynote speaker, and corporate strategist Julia Landauer. Julia made history when she was just 14 years old as the first and youngest female champion of the Skip Barber Racing Series. Her career has spanned many racing series since then, including becoming the first woman to win a NASCAR Track Championship at Motor Mile Speedway, competing in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West, and setting a record-breaking 5th place finish in the NASCAR Euro Series, the highest for an American in the entire series. Julia also founded FrontRunner, a boutique advisory and coaching firm, and hosts her own podcast, If I'm Honest. If that weren't enough, she's also a member of NASCAR's strategy and innovation team. We caught up recently to chat about all of this and much more in what I found to be a really fun and engaging conversation. I hope you enjoy. Hi Julia, thank you very much for being here today. First of all, how are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. I'm excited that racing season has started up for NASCAR and will also start up for other series. So about to get back into the race watching on weekends mode.
Yeah, it's creeped back in slowly but surely, hasn't it? And then somehow it's back in some ways, like you say already. And by the time this comes out, we'll be in full swing probably. So we're back into
Yeah.
madness straight away.
Yeah, and it's interesting because obviously with NASCAR we start the season really early in
Hmm.
February and it goes till November. So, the quote unquote off season goes by so quickly and but it's fun to get back in the swing of it.
First question I like to ask everyone that I talked on here is the cliche question, but I'm always fascinated to see what the answer might be. What did first get you interested in motorsport?
Yeah, so I wish it was a more exciting answer than but my parents were looking for an activity that me and my sister and my brother could all do together on the weekends,
Okay.
and I think they really liked that it was a co-ed sport that their girls could compete
Hmm.
head to head against the boys, and so we started as a family. Originally, just my sister and I racing go-karts, and then my brother joined the next year, and I loved it right away, and so I grew up following more of the Formula One road course racing. And then when I was 16, I personally started racing on oval tracks and in various types of oval race cars from Ford Focus midgets to, late model stock cars. And so then I started paying more attention to NASCAR and have always liked sports car racing. And so it's been a mix of being a fan and then being an active participant.
You know, ask when and why did you decide to want to become a racing driver? But I suppose it all stems back to that first time out karting, does it? And you just fell in love and it seemed the natural thing to do. And did you ever think about anything else, or was it just let's do this?
By the time I was 12, I knew that I wanted to be at the racetrack all the time. And I recognize that that's a very luxurious position to be in as a kid to know what you want to spend your time doing. But I think some of the things that really made me feel that way were that I felt the proudest of myself when I was at the racetrack. Like I loved working really hard and I didn't win right away. It took about I won in my seventh go-kart race. So it was like, a little bit into the season.
Hmm.
But to pragmatically work at something and to not, win right away, but have to figure out how to get better. That whole process is so satisfying. And it's fun to maneuver a machine. And so like all of these different things that I just really loved. And I loved winning once I did that. And it's like, this is the best feeling in the world. So we got to try to do it as much as we can. And so I never, people ask like, what would I have done if I wasn't a racer? I have no
Hmm.
idea because that was never part of the equation. But now that I'm post my active driving career, I'm kind of having to
You've had
define
to figure
who.
that out at some point now.
Yeah, yeah, I have to figure out what what my purpose is beyond just that and like my identifier because it's no longer just race car driver.
Hmm. So that first time racing, how old were you at that point, did you say?
I was 10 when I first started
Okay.
racing go-karts, and then I was 13
Hmm.
when I got into racing cars.
We'll go with we'll go with both of them, right? Actually, what was that? What were those two first experiences like? So obviously the first one liked it enough to get that second one, but I was curious: was there much of a difference between the two, and how did that kind of
Yeah.
feel to you at the time?
I'm not sure I've ever gotten this question before, so thank you for a fresh one.
Mhm.
I don't remember my first go-kart race. I'm gonna be honest. I remember the first race I was leading, and then I got distracted thinking about how cool it was going to be to win, and then I spun myself out, so I didn't win that race. I remember the first race I did win, but I don't remember my first go-kart race. So I can't really answer that question, but my first car race I really remember because I had won a local go-kart championship. I had won races on the national level in go-karts, and I was moving up to cars. And my first race was in the Skip Barber Racing Series at Lime Rock Park in Connecticut, which is a very treacherous track in the dry, and it was raining on my first race. It was really, really
Throw
slippery.
you into the deep end.
Oh yeah, in the deep end. And I will never forget that I was so scared. Like I had done the 3-day racing school and the 2-day racing school, but it was this big machine that I had never driven. I remember when I first got into a car, I went down the straightaway and I tried to like jump in the seat because that's what you do in go-karts to get the axle rotating quicker. And it's like, oh, there are seat belts there. I can't do that. But so at this race, it was raining. I was scared. It was so fast. It was so slippery. And I remember Parker Kligerman was racing in that race, and I was so bad that he lapped me twice in the rain. And so I finished 2 laps down. I was 13 years old, but for some reason I wasn't deterred. And like the next season, I won 12 out of the 14 races and won the championship. So it was just like that first one was really terrible. But if at first you do not succeed, you must try again because
You took that very literally.
very literally, yeah.
It's interesting that you say that you weren't deterred at all, though, because it's such a young age still, and lapped once in dry conditions is maybe bad enough, but then twice in the wet, you know which one's kind of worse. You think it's just bad for different reasons, but you just kind of maybe the youth that you had at that point was just like, well, it just bounces
Yeah.
off you, and like you say, when you look back and you see what you did the next year, which we get to in a second, you go, well, you know what not to do. So
Well,
now,
and
and you clearly learned from it as
yeah,
well, and just kind of like I say, you were thrown in at the deep end. So it
yeah.
was a mixture of things.
And I also think that I recognize that I was very scared. I recognize that I was not
Hmm.
performing at a way that I knew I could, but I mean, it's such a big first step to take in racing cars. And so I think in some ways I wanted to get through it. And then when I saw kind of what the
Was
result
was
was,
that your only expectation from that race? It's kind of like just doesn't matter how you get through it as long as you get through it. Or if you did get taken out, at least it wasn't necessarily something you did. If someone else had driven into you, because there's sometimes you
yeah,
can't do anything about that. But as long as you
yeah.
got there, you would be happy. Or
I'm not sure. I don't really remember exactly what my expectations
hmm.
were, but I also think I might not have had any because it was
I'm saying
just
I'm
like
also
I
putting a
knew,
lot of pressure on a 13-year-old at that point, so there might have been nothing to it.
yeah, and I don't know. My parents like I understood the investment they were putting in time, energy, money wise, and
Hmm.
I respected that from an early age. And but at the same time, I never felt undue pressure from them, which I'm grateful for. But like I had high expectations myself, and so I think. Yeah, I think because we were all so new to it, it was just like, let's go see what it is. We recognize that these are the worst conditions that I will ever have to race in. And I think we knew that it was going to be tough. And I appreciate that my parents didn't give up on me right then and there for doing such a poor job, And then had a few races in the dry that were a lot better, so that the next time I had a rain race
Hmm.
in a Skip Barber car, I still won it. So just it's a process.
And then you were saying that the next year, 14 years old, not a bad year, I would say, all in all, because you
Fabulous year, yeah.
first and youngest female champion of the Skip Barber Racing Series. So tell me all about that.
It was one of those things where so I was 14 when I was doing that, and I think when you're a kid like that, it's kind of a privilege because I didn't have to deal with any of the politics. I didn't have to deal with any of the
Hmm.
um kind of standing up for myself, I guess, because my parents were there and they were handling kind of the behind the scenes stuff or like all of the stuff at the track or like helping with having coaching and everything. So I really just got to do the craft of racing. I just got to hone my craft. I just got to ask questions and dig and experiment and try different things. And It was so much fun. And it was so cool to be the 14-year-old girl that was beating all these guys. And
Mm.
there was the next youngest guy was this 22-year-old, pretty privileged guy, who I think he just could not stand that this 14-year-old girl was beating him. And because I could see that
Cherry on
it
top of the cake.
angered him, yeah, because I could see that it angered him so much, like it was so additionally satisfying.
Mm.
And yeah, it was just really cool, I think, at such a formative age, especially for girls. Like early teenagehood for girls is a terrible time. And so to have this arena where I could work really hard and perform really well and get these wins was incredible for my confidence and for my feeling that I deserved to be there, despite the fact that there were so few women that I saw around me racing or on the teams or anything.
Mm.
Um, so it just instilled this confidence that I could be a champion. I could be great. And then I think that that helped me throughout the rest of my career. And I only got one other championship, but it was again another time where it was like, okay, you deserve to be here.
If that's not going to boost your confidence levels, I really don't know what you're going to have to do to get there, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Um,
so cool.
I was curious because of now that we know what you did end up doing next, did you have a firm idea of what that was going to look like at that point in time? Because you, like you say, you go into this series and the second year and you pretty much just dominate. Like you say, you're pretty young still. If you look at the young racing drivers today that go into Indy Next and F3 and these sorts of series, you were still very much on that pathway at that point. Did you think you were going to continue in single seater racing? Was that the plan, or did you pivot, or what was the story there? Because again, you see drivers switch disciplines all the time, but you're
Hmm.
always curious as to what the motivation for that is. Is it a financial thing? Is it just I'm good at that, I want to try something else now? So I was curious, was
Yeah.
there anything there?
Yeah, good question. It was a couple of different things. So yes, I originally the dream was to, pursue Formula One and to do that. There were a couple things. One, at 15, there were at that time a limited number of series that you could go into. And so
Mm,
Formula BMW was one of them. We did that. We were on a I don't want to say a backmarker team, but an underfunded team and didn't do well. Like me and my two teammates had both been had all been champions the year before, and then we were always at the back in that series. So that was a little tough. At the same time, we my parents had seen that someone I had raced go-karts with who was not better than me, like sometimes he beat me, sometimes I beat him, but he was suddenly so much better in the rain than I was, and he had done some oval racing, and just the car control skills that you get from oval racing are so incredible. And so originally I did Ford Focus midgets when I was 16 to kind of try to improve my road course
mm,
racing. And we were always doing this on a bit of a bootstrapped budget. I
mm,
love my parents very much, but like we were doing a lot of part-time racing. And so it's like, how do you get the biggest bang for the buck? And so once I started racing on the ovals, I really loved the racing, like the racecraft. And so
mm,
when we were looking at it, it's like, okay, I have a lot of fun with this racing. It's more local because I think my parents were willing to support me going over to Europe to race, but they also would have loved to keep me at home, to be with my
mm,
siblings. Um, and because it was a little more cost effective to go oval racing, we decided to do that. And the way I describe it is that I think when it comes to, you know, physically driving a race car on a racetrack, I think road courses are a lot more fun. But when it comes to racing against other cars, I find ovals to often be more fun because there's so much going on at any given time. And it can take laps and laps to get side by side with someone and actually pass them. And so
mm.
the racecraft is so different. Um, and so then once I saw that I liked that, I then had dreams to be a NASCAR Cup Series champion.
We were talking about NASCAR before we hit record, and weekend before last. I think it was roughly time being what it is at the moment. Everything seems to be going both very quickly and very slowly. But you saw even towards the end of that race, the toing and the throwing with the leaders at the front in the main race, and how it really just went down to the last lap, and then pure carnage at the end. So you never know really what's going to happen until it does, and it ain't until it's over.
Exactly. It ain't over till it's over. And I think things can change so quickly. And like, look, I think there are things with every type of racing that people and fans wish could be different, and that's no different for NASCAR. But I think there's so much that a driver's dealing with at one time. And I think there's so much more side-by-side racing than you see in certain other disciplines. There are others that like, sports cars, and I love watching that because I think it's also a fun balance of, road courses and interesting track layouts, and then also a lot of side-by-side racing, especially in those
Hmm.
longer endurance races. So yeah, just lots of cool stuff.
Then you became the first woman to win a NASCAR Track Championship at the Motor Mile Speedway. So, frustratingly, couldn't find a lot of information about that. So I'm just going to have to ask you about that straight up and get you to tell me about it.
Yeah, you bet. So NASCAR has, there are three professional series, the Cup, O'Reilly Auto Parts, and then Truck Series.
Hmm.
And then we have regional touring series, basically. We have the ARCA series, ARCA West, ARCA East. And then there are, we have Canada, we have Brazil, we have Euro, Mexico series. But then below that, we have our weekly racing series. And so these are late model stock cars, usually running at the same track, but you can run all over the country really, and it leads to a national points championship. So this was the track championship at that level, and that was another one where I had a pretty limited budget that year that I could work with, and this racetrack happened to have an 8 race season, and like we could make that work. So was able to go in, and I had been racing Legends cars before then all over the country, and they're like they look like 1930s cars at like half scale. Like they're very funky looking cars, and you can race them on ovals or road courses. Um, but it had kind of just like hit a wall with that, and like wasn't mastering it the way I wanted to, and you don't have spotters, and so I found that I was struggling a little bit on some of the oval racing. Had done really well on the road course racing. And so someone had recommended these late models, these limited late models, and it was so cool. Like I felt in real control of that car. The flow of Motor Mile Speedway was really cool. It's a 0.4 mile track, so it's a slightly bigger short
Hmm.
track. And so you can really get into a nice rhythm. There's a lot of side-by-side racing. And I had no idea what to expect going into that first race. And I rarely qualified on pole. Qualifying was never my strong suit. But I would qualify second, third, fourth, and got in the lead and just ran away with it. And it was so cool. And it was fun because then we had like a 6 week break until the next race. And so I just got to be the most recent race winner for six
Yeah.
weeks. But then I was so nervous, like, how do I how do I back this up? And then I backed it up. So I won half the races that year. And it was a great team. Lee Pulliam was an amazing team owner, and he's a competitor himself, but had all this equipment and just expected that if you were driving his equipment, you could win. And that was a luxury because not every team would expect that I would win.
Hmm.
And so that was really cool. And it's what's also really exciting is that he now is getting the opportunity to race at NASCAR's second highest level for Dale
Hmm.
Jr.'s team. So it's just really cool to see someone who has invested so much in the next generation of racers and help set them up for success to then also get his own
Get that
success.
kind of full
So,
circle moment to get that chance himself. Then, yeah,
like I'm his
it's
biggest
the motorsport
fan.
stories you love to have, you love to hear about, isn't
You
it? So
do. Yeah.
you competed as well in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series West. You went over to the Euro Series and kind of did a bit of record breaking there as well, with being, I think it was the fifth place finish, wasn't it? Was the highest that any American male or female had ever gotten, which
Hmm.
is a weird sentence to say because you think NASCAR, you automatically think America, so you think there must be some in the Euro Series that would be doing pretty
Yeah.
well, but you just had to go out there and show them how to do it. So tell me a bit about those two series and what those experiences were
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, so K&N West, or what was the K&N West series, now ARCA
Mm,
West series, it was really cool. It was 14 race season, and we were racing. I think the biggest track we raced on was a mile, or a little less than a mile at Iowa Speedway, plus some road courses. So it was just really great. I worked with a team that had a lot of success, and I had an incredible spotter. I learned a lot of lessons about communication, about, motivating a team, and found some success. Didn't quite get a win, but got a second, got a third, finished fourth in points. And I was racing against people like Todd Gilliland, Noah Gragson, Riley Herbst, people who
mm,
are in the Cup Series now, and was beating them. So it was a really cool. Actually, I didn't always beat Todd, but was able to beat a lot of them, and also got the opportunity to race at Bristol Motor Speedway, and Bristol is like the most fun I've ever had in a stock car. It's such a fast racetrack and it's so high banked. So that was a lot of fun and really got to feel like a prime elite athlete in that year. And then in 2020, raced in the Euro Series, which was a little tough, obviously, during COVID. So didn't get
So
the
what a year to do it.
full, huh?
What a year to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and like in obviously in the grand scheme of COVID, it was not a bad thing. Like people had way worse COVID, but from a racing perspective, didn't get the
Just adds a whole
preseason
other layer of
testing.
complications to it that you
Yeah.
literally can't replicate any other point because it's not something that happens all that often.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So couldn't do preseason testing. We only raced 4 weekends. It was still 10 races, but it should have been a 14 race season. So just like a little less track time. Didn't have any of the fans there. I ended up living, my husband is French, and at the time we were like a year and a half into dating, and I ended up living with his family full time in France because travel back and
One
forth
way to
to
find out
Europe
if
was
it's going
so,
to work or
yeah.
not.
Yep. And here we are today, so we survived. Wouldn't recommend it for every couple, but it worked for us, and he had to stay in the US during that time. So like it was challenging, but I had to get up to speed quite quickly. We have a lot of in-car data in the Euro NASCAR series in a way that we don't have in some of the development series in the US. Um, so was able to do well and got on the podium, and then finished fifth in points. But the racecraft is super different, right? Because in US NASCAR, there's very few rules around contact, and like if you
Hmm.
very intentionally take someone out in a specific way, you get penalized, but otherwise it's kind of have at it. And I was so shocked when someone took me out on the first turn and then they ended up getting penalized, and I was like, oh wow, I haven't experienced this in a long time.
Is this just politeness because it's my first race, or is this a rule that
Right.
we have here?
No, then it's a rule. So yeah, so it was a really tough season. It was really fun. I would have loved to have done it a second year, but couldn't quite get it together.
Did you know at the time when you got to the championship, let's say you were fifth, did you realize that you'd come like the highest placed American in that series at any point, or did that come later?
I did know that because there haven't been very many Americans who have raced full time in the European Series. So
Hmm.
Myatt Snyder was the other one, and he had raced. It was either the year before or 2 years before. So I knew that he got sixth, and I was like, all
Oh,
right, let's see what we can
just
do.
just nabbed
So,
it.
oh yeah, just did. There was at some point it was looking like I could have maybe gotten fourth in the series, but a bad race at Valencia ended that. So yeah,
It Motorsport things happen,
things do
unfortunately.
happen. Yeah.
And then most recently, you were in the aforementioned O'Reilly, or easy for me to say, O'Reilly Auto Parts series. So talking about that part time there, but again, I imagine quite a fun experience.
Yeah, I'm so proud that I was able to get a few starts in there. I had the dream of continuing climbing the ladder. In 2021, I did very little racing, and it was starting to look a little bleak for my driving future. And then through and this is the importance of following what you're interested in, through my interest in Web3 and blockchain and like all of that was getting really big in 2021 and 2022, ended up meeting founders who were all of a sudden cash flush,
Hmm.
who were either their NFT communities or their interests were motorsports adjacent. And I pitched them on sponsorship and got enough that I could get 2 races in the what was the NASCAR Xfinity series, now O'Reilly Auto Parts series. And so I did a start at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and then my second and then my last start was at Homestead Miami Speedway, which was the biggest
Hmm.
track I had been on. It's a mile and a half. It was the fastest I had gone at 185 miles an hour. On that oval, you actually race up against the wall through the corners. You're not coming down to the apex. That's the fastest way around. I did not fully get up against the wall the whole time. I mean, it's pretty terrifying, and I didn't feel like I mastered that car by any stretch of the imagination, but was just really proud to be able to, race in on time, qualify for it, and one of the 2 races was quite clean, and so it was great.
How did you manage the expectations that you'd have for yourself over that period when you were going through these different NASCAR series? Because, like you say, you have a part-time racing there, but then you're going into a different, well, a similar but different category from one stage to the next. Did you have a kind of a checklist of stuff you really wanted and get disappointed if you didn't, or did you just sort of take it one thing at a time and manage your expectations that way? So it's always interesting to see how drivers get into the car for either a single race, not necessarily knowing when the next one's going to happen, or if they
Yeah.
know they're going to be in a full series, what that does to the mindset.
Yeah, when racing part-time where every race is like comes as it comes, I think the mindset for me was always, do the absolute best that I could. I didn't have a result expectation because I knew that I was on a mid-tier team. I knew that, I had very limited track time. I knew that all these folks have been racing for years in this series. Like they know the car, they know the tracks. I had belief in my raw talent, knew that I would be behind most people, but really, my internal gauge of knowing, did I prepare well enough and thoroughly enough? Did I bring everything to the table that I could, and did I execute the best that I could? Those were kind of my measures of success, and things happen like you can't control. I got taken out by the eventual leader of my first race. Like I can't do anything when I'm going straight in a straight line. Um, and I was really surprised, like everyone on social media was on my side, which was really cool because it's very rare that the woman who crashes in a race has everyone on her side. But it was just so blatantly um,
Like you say,
crashing
you're
into me
literally
in a
driving in a
straight.
straight line. There's nothing else you can do. Like, what are you
Yeah,
supposed to do?
yeah. And he's the one that has a bunch of experience in the series. But so like you can't do anything about that. Um, and there were like little mistakes that I made that I would definitely not repeat. But for the second race, especially where I was very aware that that could be my last race, I was hopeful that it wouldn't be. But it was, and hitting my marks, getting faster. And I was looking at the data afterwards, and it's like the difference between me and the fastest people continued to get smaller and smaller throughout the whole race. So I was improving the whole time. And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, that's all I could ask for. And I had fun. I had a good time.
I think that's the thing, right? You have a great time. You still loved what you were doing, and you went, even if nothing else happens here, at least I'm enjoying myself. Because I think sometimes you get the impression, at least even if it's not true, from some drivers in some series that they're not even enjoying themselves with it. And you go, then why are you there? Because I can understand the frustration for a string of bad results or whatever, but you still need to try and find some element to enjoy out of it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
Um,
And I think especially for drivers who are not earning big paychecks from racing,
hmm,
like in some ways, I would assume that almost becomes more important because like why would you be doing it if you're not getting something out of it? And so I think that like lends itself to, you figure out how to have a good time or you decide to move on to something else.
hmm.
So yeah.
Do you have a favorite moment from your motorsport career? I'm going to say so far because they never know. Never say never.
You never know. Thank you. Um, I mean, like any number of the wins were always really exciting, or like knowing when I got a championship when I was 23 in that NASCAR series was so, so cool. Like I was so
Hmm,
proud of myself. But I mean, it was also really cool to make it to the O'Reilly Auto Parts series and like to be on the bigger
hmm,
stage. That was really cool. But then I think there are also little moments where, like, if I was struggling to put together a lap when I first started racing ovals, because it's a very different driving style than a road course, um, starting to feel like I mastered it was a really satisfying feeling. So there are a lot of little moments.
And on the flip side of that, if I'm thinking immediately of the particular rain race, this could be one of those that comes into this. But what was the most challenging thing for you to overcome, and how did you overcome that?
My second season in the K&N series was really terrible. And it was with a different team, and my teammate was also having a really terrible year, and I didn't feel like the team had my back. I didn't feel like they wanted to work with me. I didn't feel like anything I was doing was helping to make us better. I just felt like it felt like a huge waste of everyone's time, and it was so frustrating. And we were having multiple freak mechanical failures that should not be happening if you're doing your checklist properly. And it's just like it was a weird season. It was a bad season. It was one of those ones where like I feel like so much money and energy was wasted. And luckily there was only one or two other seasons that felt that way. Not quite that bad, but it was like it was really tough because then as a driver, if you can't make it work and you know that you're talented enough and that the team should be good enough, it's like, am I past my prime? Is this
Mm.
me? Like, what am I doing wrong? And I started to kind of absorb a lot of the blame, and then you start carrying yourself around feeling defeated. So I had to be really intentional about like coaching myself and getting myself out of that lull and really being forward focused. And luckily, I knew the year would come to an end eventually and would be able to stop. But it was a miserable, miserable year.
Was there a particular moment in that where you noticed, oh, I'm maybe doing too much of this. Isn't helping. Even if I am the problem, even if all of this is true, oh, I need to switch gears to get myself out of this. Or was it just something that happened gradually where you just kind of maybe unconsciously noticed and started picking yourself up?
Oh yeah, no, I saw a reflection of myself in the mirror when I was at home, and I just looked like a very sad, miserable version of Julia. And I was like, oh, this needs to be addressed now.
Hmm.
And kind of focused on myself and less on the team. And we continued to not do well, and then the season was over.
Curious, is there something could be from the very start of your motorsport career or later on that you learned that helped you the most, either in motorsport career or perhaps surprisingly outside of it, that you
Yeah.
weren't expecting?
A lot of things that I learned in racing that were helpful. Maybe the most important, um, I would say two things. One, the idea of hitting your marks, like when either you have a big goal or things feel overwhelming, breaking it down into the very small bite-sized pieces of that kind of serve as a roadmap for how you're going to get to where you're going. So whether that's literally like at the track, focusing on entry points, turn in, getting down to the apex, like piecing it together, that's relevant in life also. And then having really clear and explicit communication and not making assumptions about what context other people have. That was something I developed with my spotters to make sure that we were doing the best we can, and it was a lot more active effort than I expected it to be.
Curious, the communication side of it that you're talking about there, particularly with the spotter and the driver, because it's such a unique relationship in motorsport, and you don't see it across all motorsport series either,
Yeah.
or you've got slightly different variations of it. Did that contribute in any way to what you've been doing since you stopped racing full time with your motivational speaking career, or was that nothing to do with it at all and something else spurred you on to do that?
Well, the lessons I learned about communication are definitely things that I now talk about in my keynotes because they're so important. But no, I actually, I throughout college always volunteered to speak at girls' science camps. I found it really important to show some of the more technical math and science oriented ways that you could build a career, that you could, explore what you're interested in. And I think that having models of behavior that you want, or if you can see it, you can be it, like that mentality. So
Hmm.
I always did that. And kind of organically, when I went to Stanford and we have a TEDx event, and the organizers asked if I would give a TEDx talk my senior year of college. I was like, hell yeah, I will. I would love that. Like I knew I liked speaking, and I got to work with a communications coach and stitch together what should have been a 12-minute presentation. It was 8.5 because I spoke very quickly because I was a little nervous. But it was really cool because I told personal stories about my experiences with key takeaways and like some jokes and a little sass in there, and it made people laugh and it made people think. And I heard people as we were leaving that theater debating what I had said, and I just thought that was really cool. And I
You've
knew that I
probably
could
done an
make
all
a
right job then, I think, on that one.
yeah, I think I did well. And I loved it. Like it's I think either you love performing or you don't love performing, and I loved
Hmm.
being on stage.
And
Um
as an audience member, you can tell that pretty quickly from whoever's talking, you know if they actually want to be there or not. So even if you were a
hmm
bit nervous and took it quickly, I don't think they might just take that as just passionate rather than nervous.
Yeah, and it's not dissimilar from racing. Like it's a different type of butterfly that I felt in my stomach, but
Hmm.
like I think when you care deeply, you're likely to be a bit nervous because you want it to be really well done. And so before strapping into the car, I'm nervous because it's high stress and it's high reward and high risk, and I want to do a great job. And it was the same on stage. And to this day, I get that. Not quite as intense butterflies, but I still want to do a great job for each audience. And I knew that back in college, I knew it was a way that I could earn a living. And it would allow me to also, if I could build up that side, it would allow me to continue pursuing racing and pitching sponsorship, which is a full-time job for every racer.
Yeah.
So it was really cool, and I've been doing it for 10 years, and I love it and continue to do it, and can now continue to refine my stories with this post-racing real world experience, or more finely cater the messaging about stuff I learned at the racetrack that can apply to the corporate world. So
Hmm.
it's been a real treat to be able to continue doing that.
Asked you before about what was the most sort of significant thing you'd learned from motorsport that either helped you both in racing or later on as well. But has there been something as well with the motivational speaking career that has been the most sort of significant thing that you've learned that has stood out to you the most, maybe?
Hmm, that's a good one too. I'm not sure I've gotten that question before. Excellent job. I think
I'm getting nervous now. I'm having to keep raising the level here. It's not good for the rest of these questions.
no, it's great. I would say probably less like life-altering substantial lessons, but um, something that is really important on stage, which is also important in racing, is quick recovery. Like if you
Hmm.
spin, if you drop wheels, you have to get back on track right away. The audience doesn't know what you're going to say, and so when you mess up, only you know, but when you've been practicing and you want it to go a certain way and like you realize that you messed up, it's like, shit, how do I go back and incorporate what I want to incorporate, or do I have to just leave it and accept that
Hmm.
I'm not gonna incorporate that and just have to try to do better next time? So that's a fun live, like trying to figure it out. And I also think it was an important, it continues to be important to realize that like my style of speaking and my messaging is not going to be the right fit for every audience or is not going to resonate with absolutely every audience. And that's okay. And like, so thinking in terms of like, if you know that you've been proposed as one of the speakers for an event and then not getting it, because there's a lot of rejection in
Hmm.
speaking, just like there is in sponsorship development. Like, you get really good at being passed over and then having to keep building. And so I think like the more confidence you have in your messaging and knowing that it does resonate with audiences makes it easier when you don't get things that you were hoping for because it
Because
just wasn't the right fit.
it's a sort of a bit of a meta thing, I suppose, that motivational speakers have to deal with motivating themselves when they themselves get rejected, but then go up on stage to talk about how to tackle all these
Yeah.
things as well. So it's interesting fuel for you to get to use that yourself then for what
We
you're then
gotta
talking
walk the
about.
walk, right? We can't just
Mm.
spew it to other people. We gotta do as
Whereas it's
do
not
as
as
we
smooth
say.
sailing as it might appear on stage. You have these background things that the audience just assumes because
Yeah.
you're up there, you were the number one choice, and they got you there because
Yeah.
who are you otherwise? But then you go, there's all this other stuff in the background that maybe they've not thought about.
Well, yeah, and like it's kind of like social media. Like once I'm like the social media is the highlight reel, and like when you're on stage, I'm the
Mm.
highlight reel, right? Like I made it, but that means that other speakers didn't get it, and then when they see another event with it, to your point, other speakers means I didn't get it. So
Mm.
it's all humbling, and I think that it's still cool at the end of the day, and I feel very privileged that I get to do this, that I get to craft stories and like work with the audience and have that conversation with them in a way that then leaves them with more than they entered the room with, and I think that that's really cool.
And it's something as well that you'd inadvertently laid the groundwork for yourself for the future by having it back in university days and then it kind of coming back
Yeah.
again.
And I think it's an important lesson that as much as you can say yes to opportunities, even if you're terrified to do it, say yes because you just never know like
Mm.
what it could lead to, who you might meet, what skills you might realize that you have that you didn't know that you have. Um, and I just think, especially when we're young, but also when we're older, like I'm 34 now, it's like if you get opportunities, you should take them. Like unless there's a really good reason not to, you should go for
Yeah,
it.
don't say yes to absolutely everything. Think about it for a minute first, but
Yeah,
generally
like
speaking.
understand what your parameters are and your limits and what your financial
Mm.
reality is. Like measure all of that. But if it's just because you haven't done it before, like
Yeah.
you should do it.
Tell me then about FrontRunner and If I'm Honest.
Yeah, so FrontRunner is basically it's a company that I have built for the last few years that's really advising and coaching and also where I funnel all my speaking through. But it's been really cool to be able to help other people, particularly in the motorsports industry, who are getting
Hmm.
into speaking and just helping them craft their narrative and find their voice. So it's kind of my consultancy. And then, if I'm honest, as a podcast that I'm about to kick off my prep for season 4, but it's a 3 season podcast where originally it was just short, less than 20-minute episodes of me talking about various things that I've experienced, my thoughts on pop culture, my thoughts on the racing world, talking a little bit about, navigating that switch from active racer to next chapter. And so that's been really fun. And then I brought on guests and I got to talk with people like Lee Diffie, who comments
Hmm.
on a lot of racing broadcasts, who's like so cool, and people who, built and sold really massive companies and just really trying to understand how other high performers are working and what they're thinking and what little habits they can share with us so that we can all try to, live our best lives. So really cool projects. They're definitely more challenging to do when you're working full time. I work at NASCAR now and I'm on their strategy team, and um, it's very interesting to be on the league side of motorsports and not the driver's
Hmm.
side, and to be able to bring that subject matter expertise in a very different, like, operational capacity. Um, so yeah, there aren't enough hours in the day. That's what I'm learning.
Mhm. Never are. I was going to bring it back around to the NASCAR thing, like you say, it's people who listen to this podcast will get sick of me saying it, but I say motorsport's always like the mafia, easy to get into, difficult to get out of, and there's always a way it kind of draws you back in. And it seems to have done the same to you there. Like you say, you've brought it in with the motivational side of things and then helping other drivers who want to maybe look into that world as well. And it goes back to what you were saying before as well about saying yes to new opportunities because like you say, you get to talk to people who you probably wouldn't have thought you would get the chance to talk to otherwise from different walks of
Mhm.
life, and you never know what opportunities come out from it then. But at the same time, you're still very much involved with NASCAR. So how did that role come about, and how does walking in those shoes feel in comparison to literally being on track?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different. I'll forever miss being on track. Like it's a unique thing. And I think the other thing that's interesting that I'm adjusting to is, when you're a racer or a freelancer building your own thing, you're working entirely for you, right? Like
Mm,
my own person, my own talents, my own endeavors were what was driving me to build. And so now on the league side, it's interesting because I'm working for someone else's vision, and that's the same with any kind of big corporation. But it's also for something that is so much bigger than I am, right? Like it
mm,
it is so much bigger than me, and knowing even just in the 2 years that I've been here, some of the contributions that are going to be long lasting is really exciting, and I'm learning a bunch. And it seemed like a knowing that I wanted to gain some corporate experience and I wanted to understand that world a bit more, it was a really organic next step that luckily there was a place for me there. And it's very cool to not only see the business units, but then also see the whole competition side and the R&D center and everything that's going on at the track, seeing how those decisions are made and the incredible team that's behind all of that. So it's really interesting to kind of have been on the competitor side, now be on the league side, seeing how everyone engages with then all the teams and the OEMs and the partners and the tracks. And so it's this huge ecosystem that's also it's such a small world at the same time.
mm.
Um, so it's been
For a
really
massive landscape, it's a small
fascinating.
world of people.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
How did the role come about in the first place? Was it part of, just were you, was it just something that came up organically, or did you see, like you said, you're out of
I
motorsport, as
reached
it
out.
were,
Yeah,
or did it
yeah.
just,
No, I reached out to people that I knew at NASCAR to see if there would be interest in potentially having me join the team, and there was. So it took a little while to find the right spot for me, but I am really happy that I ended up on the strategy team and get to kind of dip my toes into all areas of the business and help out people and give a different perspective and work on things like our AI integration into enterprise workflows and like how to stand up to that. And then also hearing how we're making officiating decisions for races or how we're, establishing that, how we're looking at safety and on super speedways. So really seeing the whole gambit of what's going on in the company has been very
I guess it
eye-opening.
gives you a
I've
bigger appreciation of everything as well now that you kind of see the full
Oh
picture inside of the company.
yeah, 100%. And like, I think when you're a competitor at the track, you're like, oh, the world's against me. And then when you're on the league side, you're like, oh, the world's against me. And so it's just like, yeah, you get to see you see how hard everyone works and is trying to do their best. And I think that's humbling to see.
What are your ambitions for the future then?
That's a great question. I'm figuring out the future. I love building things. I love jumping into things that I don't quite feel prepared for and building and jumping into NASCAR was that. Like I had no corporate experience beforehand and definitely felt imposter syndrome for a little bit, even though I knew I would figure it out and deserve to be there. But I'm not sure. I mean, the world's a big place and I love that I'm able to continue speaking. I love that I'm able to see the evolution of racing. So I wish I had a more concrete answer for you, but I don't. My husband and I recently moved from Charlotte, North Carolina to New York, which is where I'm from. So that was kind of a big thing that we've been working on and settling into, and NASCAR has offices here, so it works out really well. Um, so now I'm just getting back to my roots and being a New Yorker while also, making some contributions to the NASCAR world and yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Watch this space, as it were.
Yeah.
Final question then, which I was thinking about earlier, so I'm going to sort of cheekily add it on. What would you tell any woman at kind of any age who's looking to get into motorsport, either in the driver's seat or behind the scenes, but is a bit unsure of either how to or doesn't have the confidence or is told, as is quite often the case, that they just don't have what it takes because of whatever reason. A lot of the time, it comes across as bullshit reasons, really, as to
hmm
what the excuses is. What would you say to them to make them or let them see that they should give it a go at least to see if they've got what it takes?
Well, thank you for that question. A multi-part answer. One, do everything that you have to do to build up your confidence. And building up confidence, I think, comes from recovery, building back, bouncing back after a failure, um, challenging yourself and proving that you can rise to the occasion. So, like, figure out how, if you're lacking confidence, how to build that confidence. Um, I think remembering that at the end of the day, you are your best advocate. And even if other people have good intentions, they might not have all the context that you have or the vision that you have. So believe in yourself and have that intuition and advocate for yourself. Um, I strongly believe in asking for what you want, either asking questions for information or opportunities. Show up and ask. And then, something I tell everybody is like, don't be the one to tell yourself no, because plenty of other people will try to
Hmm.
tell you no. Don't be your own limiting factor. And so that kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Like, if you have an opportunity, say yes. Um, but don't not try something or ask for something or experiment with something out of fear that you are not going to get it. Like, let someone else tell you no. Don't be the one to tell yourself no.
Again, I think it's always the case of you surely you'd rather try something and fail miserably at it rather than always wonder what if. Worst case
Yeah.
scenario.
Oh, the what if is, or the feeling that you could have done something differently and then maybe gotten the result that you wanted is like the most agonizing feeling I
Hmm.
think that you can have is like if you didn't give it your all, if you didn't even try, like when you're on your deathbed, like how are you going to feel about that? I find it really internally agonizing when either I underprepared and felt like I could have done more or should have asked for something. Because you just never know. But yeah. Ooh, I got very passionate about that.
It's a good advertisement for you on the whole there. I think a good place to finish off. A nice strong high point, so a quick wall or a head maybe.
I love
But
it.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to chat. And yeah, as I said just now, watch this space to see what you get up to next in the future. Could be on track, could be off track, could be both. Who knows?
Yeah, well, you've given me some more potential hope that maybe I'll get back in a car. Would love to go driving again. At the very least, we get some go-karting in. But thank you so much for having me. And if anyone wants to connect, I'm at Julia Landauer on social media, and I love to chat with people. So thank you for having
All
me.
of that will be in the description for whoever's listening, watching, wherever. So easy to find you.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you again to Julia for taking the time to chat. If you want more from Julia, details as to where you can find her will be in the show notes for this episode. I'll be back soon with another interview with someone from the world of motorsport, but in the meantime, thank you for watching and listening, and I'll catch you next time for more on the Kerbs.